news and bad news, girls. The good news is your dates are here.
What's the bad news?
They're dead.
Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 20 hilarious horror parody movies.
Get back, you eight-legged freak!
For this list, we're ranking the most outlandish, spot-on, or otherwise memorable films that spoof the spooky genre in a comedic way. We won't be including any Scream movies because those are viewed more as deconstructions and commentaries instead of parodies. What's your favorite horror spoof? Let us know in the comments. Number 20. John Dies at the End. Director John Coscarelli has made a career out of creating quirky and idiosyncratic cult films. John Dies at the End was no exception, a 2012 adaptation of the comic novel of the same name.
Who is this?
It's John. Can you hear me?
I can hear you and I can see you. You're sitting right here next to me.
Well, then just talk to me in person then. Oh, wait. Do I look like I'm injured in any way?
What?
I'm sorry, I gotta go. Say hello to me.
In this bizarre narrative, a character named David Wong has life turn into a weird horror show after encountering a substance known as soy sauce. He has to find his way back to normalcy while avoiding demonic creatures, escaping alternate Earths, and tangling with living computers.
You thinking what I'm thinking? That if Franz Kafka was here, his head would explode? Actually, yeah.
The story's wide scope allows it to parody tons of horror subgenres at the same time. Although John Dies at the End is built on the foundation of other stories, it still has its own freaky and memorable identity. Number 19. Dracula, Dead and Loving It. Mel Brooks proved that he still had some creative gas left in the tank back in 1995 when he directed Dracula, Dead and Loving It.
Children of the night. What a mess they make.
The presence of the film star Leslie Nielsen makes it feel like it's another entry in the Naked Gun franchise. This isn't a bad thing, however, as Nielsen utilizes his ability to tap into the ridiculous to make his Count Dracula into a comedy icon.
Stand up. Not you. Sit. No, not you. You sit. You stand. No, sit. No, you stand. You walk to the terrace door.
Brooks's film riffs hard on specific details from Bram Stoker's source novel and horror tropes that we're familiar with in broad strokes. Over 20 years later, this biting parody of vampires still feels as sharp as ever. Number 18. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. The drive-in creature feature was ripe, pun intended, for parody back when this 1978 feature was released.
Do you read me? Do you read me? Go away! Go away! Go! Do you read me? Do you read me? Are you happy now? Kept your favorite goddamn secret knowing where the hell we are!
Attack of the Killer Tomatoes sends up the genre by making an army of sentient produce feel like Earth's biggest threat. While the truly ridiculous premise is funny on its own, the movie is made better by the performances. The actors give earnest performances that really make us believe that tomatoes are just as terrifying as traditional creatures like werewolves. They're supported by a great script that toes the fine line between being silly and exceedingly clever. Thanks to that delicate balance, the film never comes across as mean-spirited. It always feels like a fun and quirky homage to B-horror movies.
Say, will somebody please pass the ketchup?
Number 17. Student Bodies. There are few parodies of slasher films that feel quite as on the nose as 1981's Student Bodies.
Look at him, he's got blood on his hands.
No. Since accident, Albert sometimes pee red. You know, good urologist?
From the red herrings and fake-out scares to the convoluted plot and perpetually amorous teenagers, Student Bodies gets everything right. Meanwhile, the film achieves its level of parody without all of the genre trappings you might expect. This isn't an overly bloody or exploitative film. In fact, it only earns its R rating thanks to what's perhaps the most perfectly placed F-bomb in the history of cinema.
And since research has proven that R-rated films are by far the most popular with the movie-going public, the producers of this motion picture have asked me to take this opportunity to say, F you.
Student Bodies pokes fun at slasher conventions with sight gags and one-liners aplenty. It's the sort of parodic film journey that takes everyone along for the ride.
What makes your voice sound so funny?
I'm disguising it, Schmack.
How?
By talking through a rubber chicken.
I thought it sounded like you were speaking through a rubber chicken.
Listen, I'm going to kill next at the football game. Click.
Did you hang up?
No, I just said click.
Number 16. Night of the Creeps. The good news is your dates are here. The bad news is they're dead. This was the tagline that adorned the original VHS sleeve for 1986's Night of the Creeps. Honestly, it serves as a pretty great summary of the film's cheeky sense of humor.
You're looking at your actual cryogenics lab. They've had some kid's body on ice here since 1959.
What is this, a homicide or a bad B-movie?
The movie revolves around an alien slug that escapes into a small town during the 1950s. After it gets inside of an unsuspecting man's body, it tries to spread its influence across town.
Zombies, exploding heads, creepy crawlies, and a date for the formal. This is classic Spanky.
Night of the Creeps had the tricky job of making fun of shocker cinema, zombie flicks, and slasher films at once. And it succeeds at all of it. Night of the Creeps is insanely watchable, quotable, and works as a legitimately great horror film on its own merit. Number 15, Eight-Legged Freaks. Eight-Legged Freaks was a parody of the atomic scare films of the 50s that often presented giant and irradiated monsters out on the prowl. This time around, giant spiders powered by toxic chemicals are the crawling antagonists.
Hey, Spidey!
Characters played by David Arquette, Kari Wuhrer, and an early career Scarlett Johansson struggle to fend off the spiders that threaten their existence. Fortunately, those actors and more fully embrace the premise.
Take these. You're gonna need them.
Perfume?
Well, spiders, they have a highly developed sense of smell. The perfume could confuse them.
Oh, great. You know, if we die smelling nice.
Although the effects are ridiculous, arachnophobes might still want to close their eyes during some scenes. While some may find the environmental messages as subtle as the giant spiders, there's lots to love about these eight-legged freaks. Number 14, The Comedy of Terrors.
Blood will have blood, they say.
Is 1963's The Comedy of Terrors parodying the William Shakespeare play of a similar title? Maybe. Or perhaps it was just an excuse to gather a treasure trove of certified horror legends for a single film.
What am I doing here?
Well, you're here because you're dead, Mr. Black.
The hell I am?
Oh, yes, you are. Everybody else knows you're dead, Mr. Black, except apparently you.
The likes of Vincent Price, Boris Karloff, and more show up to gently parody their own status as genre legends. They all star in a plot where a man named John Black has a medical condition that makes it appear like he's dead. While everyone around him believes something supernatural is happening every time he wakes, the poor guy struggles to get his life back.
A poor player that struts and frets is out upon the stage, and then is heard no more.
That I'll believe when I see it.
By letting bona fide horror icons play with this material, the movie gained an added layer of comedy. Number 13, There's Nothing Out There. 1991's There's Nothing Out There is often cited by horror fans as a precursor to Scream.
Name a horror film. Any horror film. I can think of about 10 right now.
What are you talking about? This place is beautiful.
Oh yeah, wait till nightfall.
Like many scary movies, the plot is kicked into motion after a bunch of teenagers go out to a cabin for typical hijinks. When an alien comes knocking at the door, they must rely on their knowledge of horror cliches to escape.
We've had warnings, murder attempts, and you're going out for a walk in the woods. I don't actually call a disappearing raw chicken a murder attempt. Well, I do.
It's fun to watch characters who know they're in a scary story fail or succeed to avoid the common pitfalls. And there are plenty of winks to other movies in the genre along the way.
You know what keeps coming to mind? Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah?
Yeah, well, I mean, mind control, birth cycle, high-pitched scream.
So, how did they kill him in that one?
They didn't.
Even though it didn't blow up into a franchise like Scream did, There's Nothing Out There is still worth revisiting for its meta-commentary alone. Number 12, Bubba Hotep. Have you ever wondered what would happen if an elderly Elvis was forced to face off against a mummy? Then good news! 2002's Bubba Hotep has exactly what you need.
Come and get it, you undead sucker.
The campy story is elevated by elite performance from Bruce Campbell as the legendary performer. Although his Elvis isn't in his youthful prime, the actor still brings a heap of energy to the role.
What kind of bugs have you been seeing? Look, man, do I look like an ichthyologist to you? Big damn bugs, all right? The size of my fist, size of a peanut butter banana sandwich, man.
Campbell perfectly pulls off tongue-in-cheek sight gags and nails the over-the-top dialogue. The creature effects and screenplay also far exceed expectations. During the story, we get commentary on ageism, conspiracy theories, and the horror genre. The combination of all the movie's strange elements result in a parody that truly rocks. Number 11. Piranha 3D. Joe Dante's original Piranha riffed on the summer blockbuster that was Jaws. Its remake took things a step further by going all out to parody exploitation flicks.
The sheriff has declared an emergency.
Don't worry, we got Pete over here!
Throughout the narrative, audiences will see plenty of skin and lots of gruesome violence. It also has Jaws actor Richard Dreyfuss make a cameo in the film. His appearance was a great way to nod at the shark classic that took the world by storm. Outside of his presence, the film's over-the-top deaths and characters are sure to keep any horror aficionado entertained. While the water may not be fine, the average scary movie fan will still want to jump into the story.
They're not fully developed. They're the babies.
And babies? Huh. So, where are the parents?
Number 10. Tucker and Dale vs. Evil.
You guys, going camping?
Appearances can be deceiving. Tucker and Dale vs. Evil follows two friends who are mistaken as psychotic backwoods killers by a group of college students. An unlikely string of accidental deaths only increases their suspicions, as well as decreasing their numbers, and leave Tucker and Dale baffled and trying to keep it together.
Doesn't matter what happened, what matters is what looks like what happened, and what looks like what happened is pretty nasty.
The ever-popular cabin-in-the-woods setting and deranged hillbilly stereotypes are beautifully skewered in this movie, driven by increasingly violent misunderstandings and dark comedy that plays out like the goriest farce ever staged. For genre enthusiasts who have somehow missed it, consider this mandatory viewing.
You say you were just working when this kid ran up and stuffed his head into that wood chipper?
That's a fact. That is a fact.
Number 9. Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. Set in a world where slasher movie killers are real, and even a pseudo-profession, Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon follows a documentary crew interviewing the eponymous aspiring killer as he takes them through his purported origins and his meticulous process for murder.
I can't just sit here on the first night I ever met you and explain it to you. It's got to come from your own understanding of the process.
The deadpan, awkward humor is a nice departure from more traditional horror comedy, and there's a wonderful contrast between traditionally filmed horror scenes and handheld camera work and interview scenes.
While they regroup, I have a short window to prepare for when it all gets outside. Then I work my way back to the front of the house, and here's where the timing becomes critical.
Plus, there are some appearances by established horror icons like Robert Englund.
Why are you following this girl? Who are you people?
We're just sitting here, man.
Oh, really?
An entertaining and loving tribute to the slasher film genre, Behind the Mask is a criminally underrated horror parody. Number 8. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Well, there you are. Shall I wrap it up?
The oldest film on our list, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein sees a pair of unlucky baggage clerks, played by the titular duo, charged by the Wolfman with delivering crates containing famous horror monsters, including Frankenstein's monster and Dracula, to a museum. Naturally, when the creatures escape, plenty of hijinks and scares ensue, as the comedic characters bounce off of the serious horror ones to wonderful effect.
Let's barricade the door. Come on, get over there. Get in there. Okay, come on. Get in there. Come on. Put your shoulder to the door. Hold it tight. Let's barricade it. He can't get in.
The film combines giants of both the horror genre and classic silver screen comedy into one unique package. It has rightfully often been called one of the funniest movies ever made.
The next time that I tell you that I saw something when I saw it, you believe me that I saw it.
Oh, relax. Now that we've seen the last of Dracula, the Wolfman and the monster, there's nobody to frighten us anymore.
Number 7. The Final Girls. While multiple movies on our list feature characters who are aware of horror movie cliches, The Final Girls takes this concept to another level entirely.
Okay, so we're in the movie.
Max Cartwright and her friends find themselves inside the slasher film Camp Bloodbath, a movie starring Max's deceased mother.
Oh, hi. I'm Nancy. What's your name?
The various ways in which the characters demonstrate awareness that they're in a movie, from their attempts to subvert the course of the plot, to even interacting with the titles, are all hilarious and make for an excellent parody of the trappings of horror cinema. There's even some heart to be had. As the film has fun with common tropes, Max also has the opportunity to gradually accept her mother's death.
Max. I'm not lost. I'm right here, right? You'll always know where to find me, okay?
Number 6. Zombieland. This zom-com follows a group of 4 survivors of a zombie apocalypse as they travel the country in search of family, safety, and Twinkies.
Not just any box of Twinkies, the last box of Twinkies that anyone will enjoy in the whole universe.
The movie's more comedic take on the zombie apocalypse is a riot, with a ton of visual comedy and over-the-top violence.
And why am I alive when everyone around me has turned to meat? It's because of my list of rules. Rule number 1 for surviving Zombieland: cardio.
There are also some great running gags, like the rules of Zombieland, as well as some surprising cameos that you'll want to watch on repeat.
Bill Murray, you're a zombie?
Add to this an abundance of infinitely quotable dialogue and a cast of memorable and endearing characters, and you get a horror parody so good that people were willing to wait an entire decade for a sequel. Number 5. What We Do in the Shadows. New Zealand has actually produced a surprising number of horror parodies and comedies, but What We Do in the Shadows is easily our favorite. Filmed in a mockumentary-style format, the film follows a group of vampire roommates whose lives are being documented by a film crew.
Guys, I think that we're not all pulling our weight here. We're not just pointing the finger at you, Deacon. You're a cool guy, but you're not pulling your weight in the flat.
The vamps' varied and quirky personalities, as well as their interactions with their friends in the outside world, of which they are incredibly ignorant, are all hysterical. While it's more a slice-of-life story than anything heavy on plot, the numerous darkly funny scenes will bleed you dry of laughter.
Yes, now Google it. Stu is the first human friend that I've had for a long time. With humans, there's a tendency to die.
Yeah.
Number 4. The Cabin in the Woods.
The board is locked! Oh, let's get this party started!
Initially set up like a stock horror film, complete with a group of teenagers being menaced by supernatural foes in the locale from the title, The Cabin in the Woods swerves typical conventions in interesting and funny ways. Unbeknownst to the teens, they're being manipulated by a mysterious organization who deals in horrors to protect humanity. The attitude of the technicians, in contrast to that of their intended victims, leads to a lot of comedy, as does the latter's gradual realization of what's going on.
I'm the boss of my own brain, so give it up.
Darkly funny, legitimately terrifying, and bitingly insightful into the mentality of the horror movie audience, The Cabin in the Woods uses familiar trappings to say something new, and deliver a vault full of laughs and scares.
Don't take this lightly, boy. It wasn't all by your numbers. The fool nearly derailed the invocation with his insolence.
Number 3. Scary Movie.
Yo, pick up the phone. What's up? What's up?
A spoof from top to bottom, Scary Movie lampoons then-contemporary slasher movies like Scream by featuring a killer in a ghost mask menacing teenagers who seem aware they're in a horror movie, while also taking every situation to its silliest possible conclusion.
It's a coincidence.
Greg's right, Cindy. I mean, what do you think, we're in a horror movie?
Jam-packed with pop culture references, as well as plenty of juvenile humor, Scary Movie is a gut-busting comedy that spawned many sequels. And even if its follow-ups did not manage to live up to the original, Scary Movie is still a riotously funny spoof of horror films, and many other movies besides.
Did I know you did last summer make any sense? Don't think so!
Number 2. Shaun of the Dead. This movie follows Shaun, whose dead-end life is completely upended when the dead begin to rise. The dedicated slacker rises to the occasion, but his attempts to rescue his loved ones go wrong in the funniest of ways. A spoof and tribute to the classics of zombie cinema, with Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg's signature snappy visual humor and dialogue, the film is an absolute blast, boasting quotable dialogue, fantastic action, gore, and one of the most creative uses of a Queen song ever put on film.
Okay, Joan, it's time at the bar.
Shaun of the Dead isn't just a spectacular horror parody, it's also one of the finest comedy films ever made. So what else could top this slice of fried gold?
How's that for a slice of fried gold?
Yeah, boy!
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Young Frankenstein.
Are there any questions before we proceed?
I have one question, Dr. Frankenstein.
That's Frankenstein.
This Mel Brooks movie follows the grandson of Victor Frankenstein, Dr. Frederick Frankenstein, or Frankenstein, as he inherits his infamous relative's castle and reluctantly decides to carry on his work.
Well, there it is. Home.
However, rather than chills, Frederick's story is an absolute masterpiece of comedy and a loving parody of the Universal Frankenstein films, to the point where it even includes some of the same props. With an all-star cast of comedians at the top of their game led by Gene Wilder, and full of more witty and quotable lines than you can shake a hand at, Young Frankenstein is a movie that's even more fun than a roll in the hay.
Hello. Would you like to have a roll in the hay? It's fun! Roll, roll, roll in the hay.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.